Source, the Black Information Network, and BINnews.com.
Wendy's is open until midnight or later, which means all your favorite menu items are up later too. The Baconator still tastes just as juicy and bacony at night, so listen to that craving and turn in for the night at a Wendy's drive-thru. Hours may vary at participating U.S. Wendy's.
This report is sponsored by Blindster.com.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
Dodgers right fielder Mookie Betts hit his 28th homer of the season. The Dodgers beat Oakland by 4. The Dodgers needed the offense. Right-hander Lance Lynn, making his Dodgers debut, gave up 3 homers. The Dodgers pitching staff has given up 35 runs in the last 6 games. There have been 3 no-hitters in Major League Baseball this season. The third happened last night. Houston left-hander Framber Valdez shut down Cleveland on just 93 pitches. The Rams are worried about wide receiver Cooper Kupp. Kupp walked off the field during Tuesday's practice and did not return. Kupp suffered a hamstring injury while running a pass route. No word yet on how long the Rams' best receiver will be sidelined. The 30-year-old Kupp missed the final 8 games last year with an ankle injury that requires surgery in the offseason. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580 is dedicated to empowering our communities by providing progressive talk radio for our audience. We strive to be an intersectional voice for the voiceless. As a Black-owned and operated station, we are committed to highlighting diverse perspectives and creating safe spaces for meaningful dialogue. We believe that everyone has something unique to bring to these political, economic, social, and cultural conversations, and we don't shy away from the hard conversations about current events. We endeavor to be a beacon of hope and understanding, while boldly challenging listeners to think more deeply about difficult topics that impact us all. With this in mind, our mission statement at KBLA Talk 1580 is simple: to create an inclusive platform that promotes civil discourse through honest dialogue and encourages personal growth among our listeners, so they can become the active agents of change. Our vision is to establish ourselves as the premier radio network with relevant programming across the beloved community, connecting people through shared experiences and collective power for lasting impact beyond these challenging times.
Live from historic Leimert Park in Los Angeles, California, I'm Tavis, Smiley, and I'm so glad to see you and me back in stride again. Before we get started with today's show, let me invite you to follow me on Facebook and Instagram at The Real Tavis Smiley and get updates on X, formerly Twitter, at Tavis Smiley. By the way, should you miss any part of today's program for any reason and want to catch up on previous shows, you can always visit thetavisSmileyShow.com. That's thetavisSmileyShow.com or wherever you get your podcast, and listen to the Tavis Smiley podcast at your leisure. A great show on tap for you today. I'll suspend my normal process of giving you all that we're going to do in the second and third hours. Forgive me for not doing that right now because I have an important guest on the line that I need to get to right away. So after we do this brief conversation, I'll tell you where we're going to go the rest of the show, and we'll proceed as usual. That said, we commence today's program with what else? Indictment number 3 and counting for Donald Trump. To say what happened yesterday is unprecedented in the annals of American history would be the mother of all understatements. We'll unpack it this hour with famed civil rights attorney and regular contributor to this program, Connie Rice, Harvard Law professor Alan Jenkins, and the man who led the first House impeachment inquiry and served as the lead impeachment manager during the first Senate impeachment trial of then President Donald Trump, securing the first bipartisan vote to convict a sitting U.S. president, California Congressman Adam Schiff, who joins us right now. Congressman Schiff, how are you today, sir?
I'm good. Great to join you.
It's good to have you on. Thank you for your time. Let me jump right in. There were 4 crimes in this indictment accusation yesterday. 1, conspiracy to violate Americans' right to vote. 2, conspiracy to defraud the government, obstructing an official proceeding, and conspiring to do so. Unlike the previous indictments, the charges stem primarily from actions Trump took while he was, in fact, president. In a statement, Trump called the new charges election interference. That's what Trump had to say. What does Adam Schiff have to say?
Well, I say finally justice is arriving when it comes to one of the most serious crimes against our democracy in history. This is a president who, for the first time ever, sought to stay in power. He did that by lying about the election. He did it by conspiring with others to defraud people out of their votes. He did that by conspiring to deprive people of their right to vote and have their vote counted. He did that through trying to obstruct the joint session of Congress. The indictment lays out in 5 different ways the different mechanisms he used to try to conspire to essentially undo our democracy. It's a powerful indictment. It really tracks very closely with the evidence we produced on the January 6th committee. And it was a long time in coming. I think in many ways too long a time in coming. But I do think that once we put this evidence before the American people on the January 6th committee, the Justice Department had no choice but to do what Merrick Garland promised at the outset, which was follow the evidence where it led, and it led to Donald Trump.
Yep. I'm with you. It took a long time, and there were many conversations on this program where I publicly asked whether or not there'd ever be an indictment out of the Department of Justice, given how long it was taking to get this report done and get it to DOJ. But again, better late than never. What do you make of the fact that, to your point, that the indictment builds on the work of the House committee that investigated the January 6th attack? There was all kinds of questions raised about the efficacy and the value of that committee, given how long it took to do this. But it appears that this indictment now really underscores the value of the January 6th committee.
I think it really does. You know, the committee didn't have a direct role doesn't have a direct role in prosecution. That's fundamentally the Justice Department decision. What we can do in Congress is we can bring about a different form of accountability through transparency. We can show the country what took place. And that's what we did. Now, we showed the country what took place in such detail, exposing things like the fake elector plot, exposing, what steps he took to pressure state legislatures to go back into session and try to reverse the results, and exposing, the campaign that he undertook against the vice president to try to pressure Mike Pence. But we couldn't take the step of actually bringing charges with the separation of powers that belongs to a different branch of government. But I think unquestionably, when you look through that indictment, that 45-page indictment, you see the committee's work. There were a few new things in the indictment because some witnesses, like Pence, refused to show up before the January 6th committee. Other witnesses, like Cipollone, the White House counsel, refused to answer questions about his conversations with the former president. But apart from a couple notable exceptions, the evidence laid out in the indictment is the evidence we laid out for the American people. And so I think our work ended up being important not only in transparency, but also in spurring the Justice Department to act.
The indictment said that Trump had 6 co-conspirators. Those 6 have not been named. We expect a couple of them, though, to be Jeffrey Clark, former Justice Department official, Rudy Giuliani, and maybe even Sidney Powell. So we haven't had those persons named as yet, but there are 6 co-conspirators, and that's a bit different as well. This thing is not just this net apparently is not just going to catch Trump, it's going to catch some folk around Trump as well, Adam Schiff.
That's certainly the question. These conspiracies, and there are 3 conspiracies charged in the indictment, He didn't conspire with himself. He conspired with several others, and it's an interesting prosecutorial decision that the special counsel has made not to name them at this point. He could have named all of them. They could have been charged at the same time. This may be an effort by the Justice Department to see whether any of these people will cooperate before they're charged, or it may also be an effort to streamline the case, bring this case against Donald Trump first, and then charge co-conspirators thereafter, so that the trial is less cumbersome. It's already going to be, obviously, an immensely challenging case to try. But unquestionably, others were involved in this criminal conduct. I'm sure that they are lawyering up themselves, even though most of them are lawyers, because they must anticipate that at some point they're likely to face charges.
And finally, given, as I said earlier, this is indictment 3 and counting, how seriously do you rank this indictment of those that have already come forth? Again, more to come. But how seriously do you rank this one? Is this the one that he is going to be unable to wiggle out of?
This is, I think, the most serious indictment of all that have taken place so far, and others that might come, like in Georgia. This was the one, frankly, that I think was most important to our democracy and most important to the interest of justice. Mar-a-Lago was very serious. It threatened our national security, involved the president's actions in trying to obstruct an investigation and then cover things up. The potential destruction of videotapes is very reminiscent of Nixon and the presidential tapes. The action in Manhattan is also significant, involving his business fraud, and then Georgia may indict him on similar actions around January 6th in the effort to defraud people of Georgia. But this is the most serious. It goes right to the heart of our democracy. It's the most serious charges in connection with a president ever, and in connection with our democracy probably ever. So this is what justice has been waiting for.
California Democratic Congressman Adam Schiff was the man who led the first House impeachment inquiry and served as the lead impeachment manager during the first Senate impeachment trial of then-President Donald J. Trump. He is now running for the U.S. Senate here in the state of California, where this radio program is flagship. We'll talk about that in another visit, Congressman Schiff. But good to have you on today. I appreciate your time, sir. All the best to you.
Thank you. Great to be with you.
Good to have you back on. More of Tavis Smiley when we come forward.
More of Tavis Smiley when we come forward.
You're listening to K-Drip, where we play all the best classic water-wasting hits like watering your lawn during the hottest time of the day and leaky faucets. They're tunes from another time, because now that we face a hotter, drier future, every drop counts. Despite an extremely wet winter, keep using less water, fixing leaks, and reusing indoor water for your garden. Visit SaveOurWater.com for more ways to conserve. Up next, brushing your teeth with the water on. K-Drip.
Extreme heat increases your risk of heat illness and death. Warning signs of heat exhaustion include muscle cramps, headache, and nausea. Signs of heat stroke include a fever of 103 or higher, confusion, and loss of consciousness. Protect yourself by limiting time spent outdoors, staying hydrated, and staying cool in air-conditioned spaces. Learn how to stay safer from extreme heat at heatreadyca.com. Brought to you by the state of California.
Contracts, and grants. This is Rambo, and I'm back August 5th. Contracts, and grants. I'll be at the Westin Hotel, LAX, Saturday, August 5th. Me and my guests are fast-paced in the contracts and grants. They only speak 6 minutes each. I have LA County, I have the city, I even have Everett, the CEO of Lindustry, coming to talk to you guys. And for the first time ever, I have Metro's Director of Certification coming. We average over 700 attendees, so you know the rules. Parking's about $15 with the event validation, event, coffee, snacks, all free, paid for by Rambo and Lindustry. And yes, you can bring guests. So save your seat, DeonRambo.com. Listen, contract ready's only 2 hours from 10 a.m. to 12. But if you get there around 9:30, I'll probably be doing some Q&As and things like that before the events I never get a chance to do. I honestly keep saying, I don't know what's more important for LA businesses right now than local contracts. So I'm back, Westin Hotel, LAX, Saturday, August 5th. August 5th. It takes 2 minutes to register. DeonRambo.com. Go register now. DeonRambo.com.
At Consumer Cellular, you get the same exact coverage as the the largest carriers for up to half the cost. Same thing, up to half the cost. Less money for the exact same thing. Hope this is clear enough. Consumer Cellular. When freedom calls, they're here to answer. Switch today and get a second month of service for free. Go to consumercellular.com/free month and enter promo code free month. Half the cost savings based on cost of Consumer Cellular single line 5 gigabyte data plan and unlimited talk and text compared to lowest cost single line postpaid unlimited talk, text, and data plans offered by T-Mobile and Verizon May 2023. Promotion subject to terms and conditions.
I'm Scott Trout, attorney and CEO of the domestic litigation firm Cordell & Cordell. We help men deal with the life changes triggered by divorce, such as child custody and property division, among many others. But life changes also occur after divorce. These changes can make parts of your existing court order irrelevant or harder to follow. If you feel a modification to your court orders might be necessary, talk to us at Cordell & Cordell. We're a partner men can count on.
1455 Frazee Road, Suite 1050, San Diego, California, 92108. CordellCordell.com.
As we go a little something like this.
Hey, it is me, D.L. Hughley, and I am thrilled to be heard weekdays in my hometown on KBLA Talk 1580. So check out the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show weekdays from 2 to 4 p.m. exclusively on KBLA Talk 1580. We got a whole lot to talk about, let me tell you. That's for the real.
Smart talk for curious people just like you. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
And I'm glad about it. All right. That was Adam Schiff, U.S. Congressman who led the House impeachment inquiry and was the lead manager for the Senate impeachment inquiry. And so who better to start today's program with than Adam Schiff? And I'm delighted that he could take a few minutes to give us his perspective on this third impeachment and counting of one Donald J. Trump. Now, let me tell you where we're going for the rest of the show, and then we'll get to Connie Rice, as I promised a moment ago. In our second hour today, why does the exploitation of black communities persist, and what can we do about it? A conversation about the intersectionality of exploitation and the legacy of devaluation for black folk with the president-elect of the Association of Black Sociologists and Associate Dean for Equity, Diversity, and Belonging at Tulane University in New Orleans, where we're heard on WBOK, 1230 a.m., Dr. Andrea S. Boyles. In our third hour today, two conversations. Up first, this year marks the 50th anniversary of the National Organization for the Professional Advancement of Black Chemists and Black Engineers. Yes, they do exist, black chemists and black engineers. And we'll be joined by two of them, Doctors Renee Robinson and Victor McCrary on the top side of hour 3. On the B side of hour 3, College Move-In Day is fast approaching. We'll speak with Howard University grad T.J. Mercer, the creator of a pretty cool idea at HBCUs called Move-In Day Mafia. Move-In Day Mafia. Again, we'll get to that on the backside of hour 3. As I said moments ago, we are commencing today's program in this first hour with what else? Indictment number 3 and counting of Donald J. Trump. And we're unpacking it in this hour with Adam Schiff, who we just spoke to in case you just tuned in. Joined later in this hour by a Harvard law professor, Alan Jenkins. But I'm pleased now to have back on this program our regular contributor, the towering public intellectual, noted civil rights attorney, Connie Rice. Connie, I'm scared to ask, how are you today?
Tavis, this one was so big I had to go get my copy of the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, and the Bill of Rights. Okay, I got all the foundational documents out. All right?
Yeah.
to make sure they're still there. You know?
Yeah.
After reading this indictment, I was like, you know, this man. Okay, so let's back up. Let's get our lawyer voice back in here.
Mm-hmm.
Tavis, we've been talking about the documents case where he stole nuclear secrets and war plans and stored them in his bathroom at Mar-a-Lago. That case is about Donald Trump being a threat to national security. That's what those indictments are about. This indictment is about Donald Trump being an ongoing threat to our constitutional democracy and to the viability of, it's about the ongoing destruction of our constitutional democracy and his ongoing attempted coup. He's still doing it. And, I mean, the thing that I thought was he aimed a Titan missile at 159 years of peaceful transition of power, which is one of the things that the rest of the world admires this country about. Now, you and I both know that for African Americans, we are the force that is trying to breathe reality and accomplishment. We're trying to achieve America's promise because it's not here yet. We have not created a constitutional democracy. We just have a framework that allows us to fight for one. And he aimed a tight missile at that framework. So, when I looked at this, I said, what I thought about was you at Gettysburg. You were at Gettysburg a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
Or maybe last month. And Gettysburg is, of course, where Lincoln gave his address, where he called for the battle to determine whether government by, for, and of the people could even continue in the face of the Southern secession threat to form a confederacy. And it was that speech where you were that triggered the Civil War. And this indictment calls Lincoln's question when he asked, can democracy endure? This indictment calls Lincoln's question today again. That's how big it is. It's as big as Brown v. Board of Ed.
Right.
And when I've read it twice now. It's brilliantly crafted, as Adam Schiff, who's my congressman, by the way. This indictment is brilliantly crafted around the notions of conspiracy, because it allows the prosecution to avoid challenges based on the First Amendment and some other things. It's too much in the weeds, but I'm just saying that this indictment is brilliantly crafted to kind of get the violent insurrection, the exploitation of the violence as part of the conspiracy.
Yeah.
That's how the 1-6 violent insurrection comes in. But, I looked at it, Tavis, and I had several takes on it. But, where do you want to go?
No, let's do that. I'm looking at my clock here. We've got about 7 or 8 minutes before we step aside for a moment, and then we'll be joined by Alan Jenkins, Harvard Law professor. Connie, of course, will stay with us, and we'll have two brilliant lawyers, two brilliant legal minds to work through this for the rest of the hour. So let me just give you these 7 or 8 minutes now to just walk through what your takeaways are. What you've given us so far is a frame, and as Connie Rice says all the time, I quote her all the time, in these kinds of conversations, or for that matter, any conversation, you got to get your frame right. You got to be in the right frame. So Connie has now framed this, I think, brilliantly about the significance in the history of this republic of these indictments that were brought yesterday against former President Donald Trump. That said, I'll pass the mic to you for a few minutes and give me your takeaways, the more in-depth explanation of what you saw when you read this thing twice yesterday.
So I'm going to go big. I'm going to go sort of 30,000 feet up and go look at the forest, okay? Not so much about the technicalities that are in the indictment. What this indictment, one of the takeaways was the destruction of the peaceful transfer of power and what a menacing set of conspiracies that Trump unleashed. The third takeaway is the real menacing undercurrent of violence. When you read this indictment, there are folks who are saying, look, if you do this stuff, if you do these fake electors and you challenge the count and the collection and the certification and you unleash this, or you try to get the DOJ and the Department of Defense to take the ballot machine, and you start fomenting all of this reaction to this lie about the stolen election, you're going to cause riots in the street. He was told by several people there were going to be riots in the street. Well, Jeffrey Clark, one of the folks you noted earlier, he said, well, that's what the Insurrection Act is for. Mm-hmm. Trump said, well, let's bring them to the streets. Then remember, he told McCarthy, well, I'm not stopping the mob because they care more about me and my reelection than you do, kind of in condoning the violence. Remember, he said, take the mags away. They're not here to hurt me. Mm-hmm. So it's the undercurrent of violence. They were willing to throw us into blood in the streets to keep this man illegally in power. Takeaway 4, the magnitude of the danger. I kind of had to put it down and I had to take a breath because I said, now the magnitude of danger is about 4-fold worse than it was yesterday. Because Trump is beating the drums in all cap letters on X or Twitter or whatever the craziness they call it now. He's fomenting and whipping his base into another violent mob, talking about they're indicting you, they're coming after you, they're putting you in jail. And he's going to whip them into a fever pitch into believing these indictments are against them, not him. And this is all amid the 2024 election, which, of course, is for him a strategy to keep out of jail. And so he's revving up the potential for political violence. And I'm partly angry that DOJ took so long to get this, because we could have had this trial underway by now if they hadn't waited. Which takes me to Garland didn't want to get political, not realizing he was in a politicized frame. Mm-hmm. He didn't understand the frame he was in, right? Mm-hmm. Which takes me to the fifth takeaway. Without Representative Benny Thompson's leadership of the January 6th congressional hearings, I don't think this indictment would have happened. And I know that committee, but it was Benny Thompson's leadership when he was so smart about it, because he let the two Republicans, especially Liz Cheney, lead the way. He let them bring all those Republican witnesses. That's what made those hearings so powerful. He didn't let his ego get in the way. He wasn't out there saying, I'm the chair. No, he was very, very strategic. I don't think Representative Thompson has been given enough credit. Those hearings are critical. They produced this indictment. Six, the other conclusion I had was, it is so essential because of that political danger that I said is being revved up. It is essential that this trial be televised. It's even more important to televise this trial than it was to televise the trial of Derek Chauvin, who murdered George Floyd. And finally, I'm always thinking about elections and power. The seventh takeaway is that this presidential election is about the turnout of the Democratic base. So, folks, my fellow African Americans, do not think about sitting this one out. This is it. Unless you want to see David Duke as head of DOJ and an anti-vaxxer like that crazy Kennedy guy as head of CDC, who'll kill us all with returning polio because he won't allow shots. Unless you want to see that kind of craziness and the shaman, the QAnon shaman on the Supreme Court, you better turn out. This isn't time to play. So we got to have the Democratic base turnout, but this election is also about a little fewer than 1 million votes in 6 battleground states. That's the audience for this, and they need to see this trial, because they are not the African-American base. They are not the Democratic base. They are the suburban base that often votes Republican. They have to be shown that the dagger at the throat of constitutional democracy depends on this presidential election, re-electing Joe Biden or anybody but Trump.
This is why Connie Rice is a regular contributor on this program. Let me just say to you, you will not find better analysis than what you just heard anywhere today, tomorrow, or in the days to come. Not on any major network, not on any other radio show, not in any New York Times or LA Times or Times-Picayune or any place else. You will not find better analysis than what you just got, and that's why I'm honored to have you on this program. Connie, I got about 90 seconds, and we'll continue when we come forward with Alan Jenkins joining you in this dialogue. But back to that question that you raised about Gettysburg, where I was just at a couple weeks ago. What does this say, quickly, about whether or not the democracy can endure the fact that these charges, these indictments, were in fact brought against a former U.S. president?
That's astonishing. Maybe the eighth takeaway is that this is the only indictment where if it gets erased because he gets put back into all of the other cases, the seminal cases, they couldn't get erased. That's Lawrence Tribe's analysis, the famed Harvard professor who's been teaching for 50 years. But the significance of Gettysburg, the threat then was a Southern secession to create the Confederacy and to preserve slavery. And it was destroying the Union. That was the threat when Lincoln said, can government of and by and for the people endure? The call to action this time, because the threat to this time is the threat of the destruction of the rule of law. If Donald Trump can foment a violent insurrection to stop the peaceful transfer of power and the certification of a legitimate election of Joe Biden, there is no rule of law.
Yeah. And
rule of law is one of the foundational pillars of the constitutional democracy. Yeah. Without rule of law, you've got Bosnia.
Yeah.
You got the Kremlin.
It is stunning to me. We'll talk more about it when we come forward with Connie Rice and Alan Jenkins, Harvard Law professor, who will join this dialogue. It is stunning to me, though. You have to just take a breath and realize this has never happened in the history of this country, that a former president has been indicted not once, not twice, but 3 times, and there are more to come. You heard me say yesterday on this program, Fannie Willis in Georgia says she's ready to go. So it ain't even over. But these indictments yesterday are just... It's hard to process what this means given the history of this country. We'll talk about it, though, when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
You're listening to Tavis Smiley. Ranked number 45 on the Heavy 100 list of the 100 most important radio talk show hosts in America.
I'm Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I learned about atrial fibrillation the hard way. My symptoms would come and go. Shortness of breath, fatigue. I kept going. Then I got so lightheaded, I couldn't. My doctor said I have AFib, so I'm about 5 times more likely to have a stroke. Other symptoms, irregular heartbeat, heart racing, chest pain can come and go, but the risk of stroke stays. If you have symptoms, tell a doctor. Visit notimetowait.com.
Sponsored by Bristol-Myers Squibb and Pfizer.
Parents, we know we can't protect our kids from everything. Eventually, they're going to bump their heads or scrape their knees. But we can protect them from 6 types of cancer. HPV, or human papillomavirus, is a common preventable virus that can cause cancer later in life. The HPV vaccine prevents human papillomavirus and all the cancers it can cause. The American Cancer Society recommends getting your sons and daughters the HPV vaccine starting at age 9 to protect them later in life.
Welcome to a Wednesday. I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network. Attorney General Merrick Garland is speaking on the indictment of Donald Trump in connection to the 2021 attack on the Capitol. Garland briefly told reporters Special Counsel Jack Smith and his team followed the facts and the law in their investigation. Prosecutors allege Trump and his allies' efforts to overturn the 2020 presidential election contributed to the riot. The man suspected of killing a woman at an Atlanta, Georgia medical office is facing murder indictments. A grand jury indicted African-American Deion Patterson on nearly 20 charges last week, including murder, aggravated assault, battery, and criminal damage. Investigators say he opened fire, killing 1 woman and injuring 4 other people. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network and BINnews.com.
Slow and go through South LA as we have a wreck on the 110 south at Adams Boulevard. That left lane is blocked as far back as the 10 freeway, the busy drive. Pomona looks like construction here on the 71 south, mission towards Rio Rancho. That right lane is taken out, and that has slowed the drive there from at least the 1057. Carson, a collision on the 405 south at Carson Street. 2 left lanes are blocked. Coming away from the 110, the very busy drive. And then northbound side of that 405 at Western into Torrance. Carpool lane blocked the crash here. And again, the busy commute as far back as the 110.
Wendy's is open until midnight or later, which means all your favorite menu items are up later too. The Baconator still tastes just as juicy and bacony at night. So listen to that craving and turn in for the night at a Wendy's drive-thru. Hours may vary at participating U.S. Wendy's.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
Dodgers right fielder Mookie Betts hit his 28th homer of the season. The Dodgers beat Oakland by 4. The Dodgers needed the offense. Right-hander Lance Lynn, making his Dodgers debut, gave up 3 homers. The Dodgers pitching staff has given up 35 runs in the last 6 games. There have been 3 no-hitters in Major League Baseball this season. The third happened last night. Houston left-hander Framber Valdez shut down Cleveland on just 93 pitches. The Rams are worried about wide receiver Cooper Kupp. Kupp walked off the field during Tuesday's practice and did not return. Kupp suffered a hamstring injury while running a pass route. No word yet on how long the Rams' best receiver will be sidelined. The 30-year-old Kupp missed the final 8 games last year with an ankle injury that requires surgery in the offseason. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
Hi, I'm Kyle at Blindster.com. Shopping for new blinds? At Blindster, we offer over 50 different blinds, shades, and shutters at low prices, custom made for your windows, and shipping is free. Shop at home and order 10 free samples of any product before you buy. Blindster.com.
For all of us, this generation and the next, there is simply no place in our lives for litter. And yet, it's everywhere we look, and unfortunately, it does belong to all of us. So let's come together and create a litter-free, clean California once and for all. Remember to properly dispose of your trash and recycling. Secure truckloads with tarps to keep debris from flying out. Clean out your car when you're at the gas station. Take pride in your community by organizing a cleanup event or join a cleanup event near you. Zero litter is the goal. Join us at cleanca.com. That's cleanca.com. Let's do it together. Brought to you by Caltrans. cleanca.com.
Carson, get back! Hey, I am Jasmine Carson, LSU Women's Basketball National Champion. I had to up my game, and this time I upped my intimate grooming routine too. Venus for Pubic Hair and Skin is the only razor and regimen specifically designed for your pubic area. Featuring a razor with a patented irritation defense bar and a skincare regimen that is dermatologist tested, Venus helps protect your pubic skin from shave irritation. Visit GilletteVenus.com to learn more about the full regimen of products.
Let's get back to more of Tavis Smiley right now.
In case you've just tuned in this first hour, we are trying our best to unpack the third indictment of Donald J. Trump just yesterday. As I keep saying, indictment number 3 and counting. Once again, the indictment accuses Trump of 4 crimes: conspiracy to violate Americans' right to vote, conspiracy to defraud the government, obstructing an official proceeding, and conspiring to do so. So there are 4 parts of 4 crimes, more exact, that make up this indictment yesterday. Donald Trump has called these new charges election interference. That's his read of it. Jack Smith, the special counsel who led the Justice Department investigation in the case, said yesterday the attack on our nation's capital on January 6, 2021 was an unprecedented assault on the seat of American democracy. It was fueled by lies by the defendant targeted at obstructing a bedrock function of the U.S. government, the nation's process of collecting, counting, and certifying the results of the presidential election. You've heard me on this program for a couple years now saying to you I had no idea and frankly didn't have a lot of confidence that Merrick J. Garland, who was basically a Washington insider, he's a part of that system back there. I had no confidence at one point that we would ever see these indictments. I was disjointed. I was all out of joint, I should say, and bothered by the fact that the January 6th committee, headed by Benny Thompson, who Connie referenced earlier, did not have the power to bring an indictment. All they could do was to gather the evidence and then turn it over to Merrick Garland. And that's what concerned me, whether or not Merrick Garland would ever bring any charges. Well, technically he did, but not really. It was Jack Smith, the special prosecutor, who Merrick Garland appointed, who brought these charges. And so I'll take it any way I can get it. At least the indictment was dropped officially yesterday. This is after the indictment dropped by Jack Smith on the documents at Mar-a-Lago. So Jack Smith is doing his job. And I have to give Merrick Garland, I suspect, credit for at least choosing Jack Smith to be the guy to make this happen. So I can finally breathe a little bit easier about Merrick Garland. I just never thought that this might necessarily happen, because it's never happened in the history of this country where a former president has been indicted on anything, much less the level of allegation that he is now facing in these forthcoming trials. We'll talk about the judge. In this case, we've talked about the judge who was appointed by Trump, who's overseeing the documents case in Florida. The judge overseeing this case was appointed by Barack Obama. So we'll talk about that as we move through the rest of this hour. We're still joined by our regular contributor, Connie Rice. Brilliant analysis moments ago, her 7 takeaways from this. In case you just tuned in, we started this hour being joined by Adam Schiff, the U.S. Congressman out of California, who led the House inquiry, impeachment inquiry, I should say, against Donald Trump, the first one, and then he was the lead manager for the Senate impeachment trial. So we were honored to have an exclusive conversation with Adam Schiff to begin this conversation. We're now joined as well by Harvard law professor Alan Jenkins, who I'm pleased to welcome back to this program as well. Professor Jenkins, how are you today, sir?
I'm well, Tavis. Thanks for having me on again, and also good to be with my friend Connie Rice.
It's good to have you both on. I couldn't do better in terms of legal minds to discuss this for the rest of this hour. Let me just give you first dibs, Professor Jenkins, because again Connie's already spoken, and we'll bring her back in just a second here. I don't need to ask you, much. Your thoughts on what went down yesterday.
Yeah, this is a remarkable indictment, and for its clarity, for its specificity, it's really written as a story in part to the American people so that we can understand what this prosecution is about. I think importantly, Jack Smith and his team in the indictment explain that our democracy is the most important thing we have as a people. It's what helps us to protect all of our other rights and liberties. The document recognizes that, like all Americans, former President Trump has a right to free speech. He also, like all Americans, is not above the law. And the indictment makes clear that what the former president did and said went far beyond free speech and anything that's protected by the Constitution to engage in a criminal conspiracy to derail our democracy.
Professor Jenkins, much time has been given on this program and in the media writ large trying to assess what it means when we have these indictments, what it means specifically regarding who the judge is that's sitting for the case. We've talked ad infinitum about the judge in Florida sitting in the case of the documents. She was appointed by Donald Trump, and now we're told that Judge Tanya Chutkan, a Barack Obama appointee based in Washington, will oversee this case. She has overseen trials of the January 6 rioters, including harsh sentences against them. She also rejected Trump's attempt to avoid disclosing documents to the House January 6 committee, writing, and I quote, "Presidents are not kings," close quote. So a lot of conversation, not just about the indictments today, but about the judge who will oversee this case. What say you about the judge overseeing this case? Now, I'm not suggesting you know her personally, but again, it's always fascinating that the minute we get these indictments, the next step, of course, in the media is to start trying to assess who the judge is overseeing the case.
Right. And, full disclosure, I did meet Judge Chutkan a number of times when I was a baby lawyer and long before she was a judge. There are fair judges who have been appointed by all presidents. Mm-hmm. Judge Chutkan is fair, she's smart, and she's tough. And she's familiar with the events of January 6th. I think she's going to be very careful. She understands the stakes. I think she's going to rule fairly, and I think she's going to prosecute this with that principle that no one is above the law, that everyone is innocent until proven guilty, but once they're proven guilty, they need to be held accountable.
I've talked many times on this program, indeed it's one of the running themes because I believe it with every fiber of my being. And Connie Rice, who we'll pull back in here in just 2 seconds, and I've had these conversations, given that she's a regular contributor to this program, Professor Jenkins. We've talked often about the fragility of our democracy. My read of history suggests that every empire in the history of the world at some point has its reckoning. Every empire eventually falters or fails. That's just the way history reads. And we continue to advance this notion of American exceptionalism as if we can't be or are not on the precipice of our democracy failing. We saw that happen in these in this January 6th insurrection. My question very simply is this. What does it say about the state of our democracy, the future of our democracy, that these indictments were even leveled yesterday, Professor Jenkins?
Well, it's an important step. I mean, you're certainly right that our democracy is frail at this moment, probably more frail than it's been in over 100 years. And the indictment shows us, the facts that are raised in the indictment remind us how close we came to our entire democracy toppling in the days leading up to January 6th, with all of the efforts that the president, former President Trump, allegedly made, and the violence that day. But to your question, this is a very important step. This is a sign. This indictment is a sign that important elements of our democracy are holding, at least for now. And I think we need to watch this case very closely. I think the way in which it's handled and the way in which it turns out will be very important for our democracy. But it's a positive step, no doubt.
Yep. More with Harvard Law Professor Alan Jenkins and our regular contributor Connie Rice when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
Seeking the truth. Speaking the truth. This is the Tavis Smiley Show.
MC Light for AARP. Hip-hop, the cultural phenomenon that took New York by storm in 1973, is celebrating 50 years of rocking mics and crowds. Whether you're a ride-or-die hip-hop head or simply curious about its origins, check out the latest issue of AARP the magazine. It celebrates this incredible milestone with a featured story brimming with fun hip-hop facts and history. Head over to aarp.org/Black Community to learn more.
Community is more than where you live. It's the people in it who go above and beyond to help it thrive. During the 50th anniversary of hip-hop and the 75th anniversary of Black radio, AARP recognizes the members, volunteers, people, and partners giving back to our communities. We believe when our efforts drive change for the greater good, we all thrive together. To learn more about how AARP supports efforts to keep our communities thriving, visit aarp.org/Black Community.
JP Morgan Chase is building on the investments in California and around the country to help close the racial wealth gap and build a more equitable future. As part of JP Morgan Chase commitment, they are taking action to help improve financial wealth and access to banking in the Black community, helping more people open low-cost checking and savings accounts, hosting community seminars with supporting Black-led institutions by building awareness about financial investments, hiring community managers, and opening community center branches like Crenshaw, Inglewood, and downtown LA. Visit today, jpmorganchase.com/racial equity. Again, jpmorganchase.com/racial equity. Get the tools to help reach your financial goals. Visit today, jpmorganchase.com/racial equity. Again, jpmorganchase.com/racial equity.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 reminding you that we keep us safe. The Center for the Pacific Asian Family was founded to help address domestic violence and sexual assault in the Asian and the Pacific Islander communities. The Center for the Pacific Asian Family's mission is to build healthy and safe communities by addressing the root causes and consequences of family violence and violence against women. They are committed to meeting the specific cultural and language needs of the Asian and Pacific Islander women and their families. CPAF's vision is of an Asian and Pacific Islander community that embraces healthy relationships and works in partnership with other communities to eradicate all forms of violence. To access services, volunteer, or for more info, visit nurturingchange.org. At KBLA Talk 1580, we believe everyone deserves to be safe. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
We boldly go where no man has gone before.
Boldly taking talk radio where it has never gone before. New vistas, new voices, new views, new visions, new victories. We're KBLA Talk 1580. And we're taking public media black. He's rooting for everybody black. More of Tavis Smiley coming your way right now.
Connie Rice, we are back to that prevailing and in some ways penultimate question that you and I cannot get away from, and that is, will these indictments, 3 and counting, hurt Trump's 2024 campaign? Your answer has been consistent all the way through, but I'm going to keep on asking because to your point, and to Adam Schiff's point, and to Alan Jenkins' point, what we saw yesterday is unlike anything we've ever seen in this republic. So I'm going to ask you one more again. Will these indictments hurt Trump's 2024 campaign, Connie Rice?
No, they're going to help him. He's going to raise a ton of cash. He's going to town on this one. I'm trying to tell you, we're in a cult frame.
Yeah.
So the physics are reversed. Anything, he could commit a capital crime now. He'd probably raise $1 billion. But first of all, I just have to say it is so good to hear my friend Alan. I have missed Alan. It's just so wonderful. So
Same here.
No, this is going to help him with his base.
Yeah.
So that hasn't changed, Tavis. Keep asking.
So let me ask you another question I've asked again. What you make of the fact that basically Asa Hutchinson is really the only person, and Will Hurd, as pressed the case, the brother, one or two brothers, Will Hurd and Larry Elder, both running for president on the Republican side. But basically, those whose names we know, the Chris Christies and the Nikki Haley's and the Ron DeSantis's and those persons have still not called for Donald Trump to get out of this race. The Republican National Committee has still not called for Donald Trump to get out of the race. I'm not naive, Connie, in asking this, but how do we read that? How do we read that these indictments just keep piling up? And again, when you read what they are alleging that Donald Trump did inside the White House, the fact that his fellow Republicans running for the nomination, the fact that the party apparatus on down the line has not had more to say about this is, again, not naive here, but how do I read that, Connie?
It's what we talked about in one of the earlier shows, Tavis. It's about the death of truth. If you've got half of white America listening to fraudcasters and demagogues like Alex Jones, who basically tell them black is white and up is down, they tell them the opposite of what's actually happening. So when they report on this, it's about election interference with Donald Trump's bid. When they report on this, it's about the FBI unfairly targeting someone because apparently stealing nuclear secrets is not a problem in their eyes. So they have been whipped into an identity, attraction, and cohesion with him. And so when he's attacked, he translates it into an attack on them, and that's how they take it.
Yeah.
Tavis, I think that the people we're talking about, they're not all one, can't paint them with all one brush. There are different reasons for supporting Trump this blindly. But one of the major ones for the folks who stormed the Capitol is they've lost their position socially in terms of racial supremacy. They've lost economically. The international trade agreements outsourced their jobs. They've been in a rust belt for 50 years. Their children were sent to fight wars based on lies from Vietnam forward.
Cut it. Let me cut in right quick. I apologize. Let me cut in right quick. And when we come forward, we'll come right back to this point about who these persons are that continue to raise his poll numbers. Who are the persons that seem, unbothered by these indictments? We'll get Connie's take on that and Professor Alan Jenkins' take on that of Harvard when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
Hope, agency, dignity. This is Tavis Smiley.
Can you dig it? Come on!
Hey, Dad, how do airplanes fly? What's in this box? Is this tree good for climbing? How are babies made? What does this thing do?
Kids are curious about everything, including guns. Talking to them about gun safety in your home is a good first step, but you can do more. Always keep your guns locked, unloaded, and stored separately from ammunition. Safe gun storage saves lives. Learn how to make your home safer at endfamilyfire.org. That's endfamilyfire.org. Brought to you by End Family Fire, Brady, and the Ad Council.
Need help with the job hunt? It can be challenging, but don't worry. LA County has your back. With a variety of available support services, you'll get the help you need while finding a job. We're here to help you succeed. Let's get started. Find out if you qualify at recovery.lacounty.gov/programs. That's recovery.lacounty.gov/programs. LA County and you moving forward together.
Hey there, Los Angeles. This is James Lucky Jr., publisher and editor of Los Angeles News Observer. Are you hungry for news that matters to you in the African-American communities of Los Angeles? Well, buckle up, because we got the scoop you've been craving. Stay in the know and never miss a beat with our free weekly publications conveniently available near you. Or hop on the digital wave and become an exclusive subscriber at OGNSC.com. Don't forget to join the party on Instagram and Twitter at OGNSCINC for behind-the-scenes access and sizzling updates. No more FOMO. Let's stay informed, connected, and empowered together.
Dominique DePrima for KBLA Talk 1580. Are you worried about your credit score? Well, look, you can rebuild it. There are lots of factors that go into determining your credit score, but one of the most effective ways to improve your score is to consistently pay your bills on time, over time. If you're forgetful about payments like me, try automating your bill payments. That way all your creditors get paid on time and you'll have freed yourself of trying to remember. Whatever your financial goals, U.S. Bank Access Commitment Initiatives can help support you in reaching them. Access your financial goals at usbank.com/access. Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
More honesty than you can handle. More empowerment than you can imagine. You're tuned in to Tavis Smiley.
I got a tight 5 minutes here left, Connie and Alan got a tight 5. Connie, finish your point about who these people are that seem unbothered by these allegations. Every time Trump gets indicted, his poll numbers go up.
Let me finish this point real fast.
Sure.
I was saying that they are betrayed, that they are people who are alienated, betrayed, and feel like they have lost the promise of the country. They were promised supremacy over African Americans forever. When they saw Barack Obama get elected, they had a psychotic break for some. That's about maybe 25%. So I'm saying Trump is a big middle finger, their big middle finger to the establishment, to the GOP establishment, to traditional politics, and most of all to multiracial and pluralistic democracy. They are not interested in e pluribus unum democracy. They're saying, no, we want autocracy and we want racial dominance, Christian dominance, and that's why they're attacking us as African Americans. They're attacking immigrants, LGBTQ. All of us have better band together to fight against this, to save our democratic framework.
Professor Jenkins, talking politics here right quick. Joe Biden, the current president, of course, has been rather quiet about these indictments. I think politically, I think that's the right strategy. Do you and I agree on that?
Yeah, I agree. He's got to remain relatively quiet. I think he could be a lot louder about a lot of other things that are going on in the country. That's just my editorial view. But yeah, I mean, he's got to let this play its run its course. And if he seems to be overly involved, he's just going to reinforce the false belief that many people have on the Trump side about the Justice Department.
How divisive is this going to be for the country and for our body politic, Professor Jenkins? There's no way that the optics of this can continue. That is to say, for those who support Donald Trump, for those who are Republicans who question the role of government in this moment, every time there's another indictment, and Fannie Willis is on the way in Fulton County, Georgia, you have to believe that this is advancing a narrative, as Connie said, that they find credible, and it's going to make our politics even more divisive in the months and years to come.
Well, what's divisive is, Trump and his allies repeatedly telling lies, repeatedly engaging in acts of what I would consider to be white supremacy, as well as undermining our democracy. Holding him accountable is not the source of the division. It's the acts that he has taken. And I think just to add to what Connie said, I certainly agree. On that day, on January 6th, there were white nationalists, there were neo-Nazis, there were anti-Semites, the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers, members of whom, leadership of whom have been convicted of seditious conspiracy. But there are also a lot of ordinary folks who are stressed in the way that Connie notes, and who were lied to and believed the lies. As you know, I've written a graphic novel about this, 1/6, the graphic novel, where we're taking up all of those different characters and with some empathy, because many of them were there because of the steady diet of lies that they were fed by President Trump and others.
That graphic novel from Alan Jenkins is called 1/6, What If the Attack on the U.S. Capitol Succeeded? 1/6, What If the Attack on the U.S. Capitol Succeeded? It's a great graphic novel. We had him on the program when that novel dropped, and happy to remind you about that text once again. Connie, 60 seconds left for you. Final word. All right, you know how we do it. Put us in the proper frame, Connie. That's your edict, that you got to be in the right frame. Put us in the proper frame for how we move forward.
We are in a ground war to preserve the rule of law, constitutional multiracial democracy. And this 2024 election is it. It's going to be the defining battle as to whether we go forward as a multiracial democracy on the road that African Americans have paved most of any other group, or are we going to go back to Gone with the Wind autocracy, the totalitarian autocracy of the white South.
Yeah.
That's the battle we're in. So people suit up, get off your couches. I don't care if you like Biden or not. Get out there.
Yeah. We'll leave it there for now. But trust me, as this story continues to unfold, you'll hear the voice of Connie Rice again, and you'll hear the voice of Alan Jenkins again. It may be sooner than you think, because Fannie Wood is about to drop her thing in Fulton County, Georgia, as I said earlier. Connie, thank you. We'll talk to you soon. Alan, thank you as well, Professor.
Thanks so much.
Good to have you both on. More of Tavis Smiley when we come forward.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
Welcome to a Wednesday. I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network. Attorney General Merrick Garland is speaking on the indictment of Donald Trump in connection to the 2021 attack on the Capitol. Garland briefly told reporters Special Counsel Jack Smith and his team followed the facts and the law in their investigation. Prosecutors allege Trump and his allies' efforts to overturn the 2020 presidential election contributed to the riot. The man suspected of killing a woman at an Atlanta, Georgia medical office is facing murder indictments.